All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Jurors and alternates all have returned. People versus Durst, Mr. Durst, Terry, Mr. DeGuerin, and Mr. Chesnoff. We have Mr. Milius, Mr. Lewin, Mr. Bailey, and Mr. Henderson, Mr. Miata also. You may resume your examination of the witness, Mr. DeGuerin.
Bob, I started to ask you about where Susan was and what she was doing while you were working on opening your store in Middlebury, Vermont. What was Susan doing then?
So this is like 1969, 1970. Susan was working for City Magazine, and she had decided that she wanted to write a book about the story of her life. I think I said before the break that her father was a well-known lobster type. Davy Berman was Bugsy Siegel's right-hand man. Susan had photographs of herself at her birthday parties when she was young with Liberace performing for her and her friends. And she felt that in order to get the book published, she should move to New York, which is where the publishers were.
Let's get this microphone a little bit closer to him, or maybe you could speak directly into it. It seems to me his voice has dropped off a little bit, and it might not be quite as audible as just before the break. That looks better. Thank you, Mr. DeGuerin.
So did Susan move to New York?
I need a little background here. From shortly after I got back to New York, I had taken a floor in one of my family's townhouses and in the city, and I was using that when I stayed in the city. I told Susan that if she wanted to, she could move into my second bedroom. So Susan moved to New York and moved into the second bedroom in the town. New Yorkers call them brownstones. Out here they're called townhouses. So Susan moved in to the second bedroom on the one floor of a townhouse that I was using. She stayed there for about 6 months when she rented an apartment in a well-known area called Beekman Place.
Okay. During this time, Susan moves to New York, stays in your spare bedroom, and then gets her own place 6 months later. What were you doing? Were you working in New York, or were you working to open your store, or were you doing both?
I was spending very little time in the city. Most of my time I was in Middlebury, Vermont. But I still had friends from high school and college in the city. The man who introduced me to Susan, Stuart Altman, had graduated from Brooklyn Law School and had just gotten divorced. He needed a place to stay, so I had my the residential leasing agent show him apartments in the city. He moved into a building 1 block from where I was living.
All right, I'm going to stop you there so I can ask another question about that. And the jury has seen Stuart Altman. We know that he also introduced you to Susan when you were going to UCLA. What role does Stuart Altman then play in your meeting Kathy McCormack, who later became your wife?
So one weekend, Stuart called me up and said the 2 cute girls had just moved into the building where he was renting an apartment. He brought them over to my apartment and we went out to dinner. One of them was Kathy McCormack. Kathy McCormack and I got along very, very well.
So tell us, from that very first moment, what was your impression of Kathy?
She was pretty. And she was interesting. We could talk for a long time. We stayed up most of the night just talking to one another. She had just gotten out of high school and had spent a year working for the as a receptionist in a dental clinic. She did not have Kathy did not have any dental training. She could not clean teeth or anything like that. Her role was mostly to take the patients from the reception area into the dental rooms.
Okay, let me stop you there and ask another question. I'd ask you what your impression was of Kathy. Did you and she hit it off well?
We hit it off real well. We went out a couple more times in New York. And when I went up to Middlebury, Vermont, she came with me and stayed for 3 or 4 days.
Had you already opened your store in Vermont?
No, the store was still a work in progress. We were buying lumber for shelves and bookcases and cabinets, and we were doing a lot of the work ourselves, cutting 2x4s and cutting plywood.
So, to clarify, was the store open when you took Kathy up to Vermont with you, or not?
When Kathy first visited me, the store was not open. It took another couple of months. I was hiring students from Middlebury College. At the time, the minimum wage in Vermont was $1.60 an hour. So it was very inexpensive for me to hire students to help me build the store. Kathy must have visited me probably once every 3 weeks for 4 or 5 months. Each time she would stay a little longer. Then she went and quit her job at the dentist's office and moved in with me in Vermont.
So, from the period of time when you first met Kathy until she came to spend time with you in Vermont until the time that she actually moved in with you in Vermont. Tell the jury how your relationship with Kathy progressed.
Well, it progressed the usual way.
Did you fall in love?
Yeah, we were both in love. We both liked to be each other. Middlebury, Vermont was very quaint, easy to live in. There was not much in the way of entertainment. You had to entertain yourselves.
Well, what was your business plan about the store?
Well, when a new store opens in a small town, the wholesalers are all very interested in getting you to stock your shelves with their products. In Vermont, there were a lot of farms. A lot of people grew vegetables and fruit and things where they had no place to sell. So we were able to very quickly go into business, and we could stock the shelves with everything we needed. And we would not have to make a payment for 6 months or a year. And if whatever it was that we had brought into the store did not sell, the wholesalers would take it back. So it was pretty easy to start the business from scratch. A typical day, Kathy and I would walk from the downstairs of this house we had rented to the store. It was about half a mile. Work in the store all day and walk home. Part of the house that we rented used wood for heat. So we learned about how to cut up logs using a bow saw and using a log splitter so that we had heat in the whole house. And we would cook these elaborate meals. The store sold a whole bunch of hippie-type books, things on how to bake bread, lots of recipe books, and things about living off the land.
Let me stop you and ask another question. The store had been your idea in the beginning, and then you met Kathy, and Kathy started spending more time until she actually moved in with you in Vermont. Tell the jury how Kathy took to the store and the idea of living in a small community.
Well, Kathy was from New York City, just outside of New York City. So everything was brand new to her in terms of a small town and what you did in a small town. Like bingo night was a great big deal. Everybody would go to bingo night because there wasn't much else there. There was one small movie theater. Periodically, if you went to the 9 o'clock show, there'd be a sign up on the door that nobody had showed up for the 7 o'clock, and the guy had canceled the 9 o'clock. There were few restaurants. Living in a small town was as new to her as it was to me. Everybody knew everybody. The postman lived upstairs.
Did you
for
like it?
example.
Did you like it?
We both liked it.
And I was going to ask you if Kathy took to it also.
We both liked it.
What role did Kathy play in running the store?
Same as me. We both worked on building shelves and cabinets, and we both worked the cash register, and we both worked on opening up the boxes that the stuff came in.
So you
and
worked
putting
side.
it on the shelves and putting prices on it.
So you worked side by side.
Yeah,
Did you enjoy that?
yeah.
What was the situation with the Durst organization and your father in New York during that time?
Well, my dad visited us probably once every couple of months and stayed overnight at the Middlebury Inn. And Dad was very interested in convincing me that I should come back to New York because obviously the store was never going to make me rich. He was right. It was never going to make me rich.
Did that matter to you?
It didn't bother me at all.
Why
Because
not?
I was making so much money from the trust income. More money came in every month than I could possibly spend. My biggest expense was paying income tax on my income. Other than that, I spent very little money.
Well, did you see the store as being a huge success or not?
It was a success to me. It made a little bit of money. Well, I didn't really care that much. Sometimes when we looked over what we were doing, we would realize that we were selling stuff for less than what we had bought it for. Well, I mean, it was never something where we needed the money, because we had money.
What did you call the store?
All good things.
How did you land on that name?
It comes from something or other which I can't remember right now.
So what did the store sell other than natural food? You said it was
We
natural
sold a
food.
little bit of everything, a little bit of hardware. If you wanted a hammer, we had a hammer. If you wanted nails, we had some nails. If you wanted a screwdriver, we had a screwdriver and some screws. We sold some toiletries. Our joke was you could have any kind of toothpaste you wanted as long as it was Colgate. We sold toothbrushes. We sold combs. We sold a bunch of different soaps. But there was one of everything.
Did you sell food also?
Oh, it was mostly food,
What kind of food?
health food,
How did you?
granola,
I'm sorry? Granola? Was granola invented back then?
lots of
Relevance.
granola.
352?
Right.
There's an exception for humor.
It was
When
a,
I hear humor, I'll want to.
yeah, no, thanks for keeping it light. Now let's move to the next area.
All right. So, Bob, when you went into the city, did you actually go to the Durst organization from time to time to work?
I did not work. Sometimes Dad would tell me that there's a such and such meeting, and would you please come and sit in the room during the meeting? And periodically I would do that. But I would do it sort of my way. In Middlebury, Vermont, I would wear jeans and a work shirt. Dad convinced me. Actually, one day when we were walking to dinner, he stopped at Brooks Brothers. Brooks Brothers was known as the store for executives. It's not like it is now, where there are Brooks Brothers in lots of shopping centers. Then there was one Brooks Brother. It was in Manhattan, in Midtown.
Was there more or less a uniform for working at the Durst organization?
That was it.
What?
So I bought a suit, and periodically I would go into the business and sit in on a meeting. I felt bad about rejecting Seymour. My dad felt that I was rejecting this business which he had spent his lifetime creating for me. Except I did not feel like it was for me. I felt he was doing what he loved doing, period.
And did you want to do that?
I felt like I should do something so that he did not feel like I was being spiteful to him.
On the other hand, what was your work uniform in Middlebury, Vermont?
Jeans and a work shirt.
How were you more comfortable?
In Middlebury, Vermont, I was never comfortable in my suit.
Kathy was living with you by then in Vermont and running the store. How did she feel about your trips to New York to work for the Durst organization?
Whenever I told Kathy that I was going to New York for several days, she would start to get sort of upset. I think she guessed what was going to happen in the future, which was that I was eventually going to give in and go to work in the Durst organization.
So, again, did you want to do that? Did you want to go give up what you had in Vermont?
I wanted to stay in Vermont, but I convinced myself that I should go work in the Durst organization for a couple of years. And then Dad would see that I did not like it and that I was not good at it, and it would be okay with him if I did not work in the Durst organization. By 1971, Kathy and I had decided to get married.
All right. So, my next question was going to be how long you and Kathy had the store in Vermont.
Probably a year and a half.
That gets us to 1971.
in 1971, we decided we would get married. My initial reaction, I wanted to make sure Kathy was aware that I did not want to have children.
I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But first, I want, there was a photograph that was, the jury's already seen it, but I'd like to put it up again and ask you about it. It's our number, it hadn't been marked yet as ours, but it's our number 8.
What, People's Exhibit number?
I'm not sure what number it was. It's People's Exhibit. Can we have it marked as ours?
Could be defense H.
Oh yeah, this screen is not working, so the jury will have to take a look at this other screen.
I think the TV just needs to be turned on.
No, it's a problem. The jury can look at this today. We'll have it restored in the morning.
So Bob, what's the number? What's the exhibit?
Your Honor, it was People 63.
People 63.
Defense.
Your Honor, should we mark it as ours also?
Why don't we, I think it's gonna get confusing if we double mark exhibits.
Yeah.
It's People
So-
63.
I agree.
That's the
People
rule.
63. So Bob, what are we looking at? Can you see it?
Yes, it's me in my hippie uniform and Kathy on our wedding day.
What day was that?
We did it on my 30th birthday, April 12th, 1973.
Where in the world did you get that tie? That didn't come from Brooks Brothers, did it?
He hadn't met Chip Lewis yet, had he?
He had not. You don't have to answer that. Bob, tell us about that day.
Well, as it was, Kathy's father died when she was 12 from colon cancer. It was a terrible thing that she went through and that her father went through. In those days, if you got colon cancer, well, maybe it's the same way today, but what her father went through was having an incision in his side and a bag attached to it, kind of like the bag that I've got here for my urine, but this was for his
Maybe relevant
poop.
to Your Honor?
And you have special clothes made. What?
Just a minute.
Overruled.
You go ahead.
And you have special suits made with a pocket that holds basically a day's worth of poop. And you've got to clean the thing out, of course. Seemingly, he lived for about 9 months like that, and then he died. And I can get back to our wedding day. Since Kathy had no father, and I had no mother, and neither of us was interested in having a big party, what we did was we found this glade about 10 minutes from the house in Katona. We told nobody we were getting married, except I told my dad and Kathy told her mother. We went downtown New York to the municipal building and we got a marriage license. We invited a priest and a rabbi. Kathy was Catholic. I am Jewish. But neither of us did much of the partaking of our religion. So the priest and the rabbi.
Streamline this, please.
Okay.
Priest or rabbi, I mean, let's,
Well,
If he says they went into a bar,
No, I'm not gonna make,
I'm out.
I'm not gonna go there, but let's, it is a narrative, and even though this is a story.
you understand, Bob, I need to break it up in question and answer.
Yeah,
So, you and Kathy were married by both a priest and a rabbi? That's a question.
I don't know what the question is.
Okay. Is there a delay on the screen? Never
Is
mind.
there a delay on the screen? Minimal.
Okay,
But if I ask a question,
let me ask a question. You were married by both a priest and a rabbi on your birthday, is that right?
yes.
Was it a happy occasion for you?
Or there were, so we invited Kathy's mother and my father.
My question is, was it a happy
It
occasion?
was happy.
Was Kathy happy?
Kathy was ecstatic.
Were you happy?
I was ecstatic.
Were you in love?
We were both very much in love.
Where were you living and where did you plan to live in the next year or so?
Well, about a year before we got married. About a year before we got married, I promised Dad that I would shut the store or sell the store and come work in the Durst organization. But I told him that if I did not like it, I would only do it for a little while. I was very pleasantly surprised to find out that there were people who wanted to run our health food store. So I was able to sell the lease and to sell the inventory, I guess you call it, and make a small profit. And we gave up the lease on the apartment where we were living in Middlebury.
So where were you living then when you and Kathy married?
Well, there's more to the last part of it. So I sold the store, gave up the lease on the apartment. We had bought what's called a quarter section, 160 acres of forest land on the hillside about 40 minutes outside of Middlebury, where we planned on building a house someday. So we kept the land. We moved into the Katona house, and we fixed up the apartment in the city where Susan Berman had visited us.
So
Before we did that, we went on our honeymoon.
I'm going to ask you about that. But so at the time of your marriage, were you living in Katona and the apartment in Manhattan and had given up the house in Vermont?
Yes, I gave up the rented apartment that we were living on in Vermont. It was the downstairs of a house.
All right. Now, you mentioned your honeymoon. Did you and Kathy take a honeymoon?
Yeah, so we got a van,
What
and
kind
we
of
spent a lot of time.
what kind of van? What kind of van?
Ford,
All right.
and we built all kinds of stuff in the van. We had a mattress and an ice box and some kind of a stove, and we took 2 months and drove around the country. We visited Susan. Susan had already moved to New York, so we did not visit Susan in San Francisco. We visited my baby brother Tommy in San Francisco.
What was your relationship with Tommy then?
He was 7 years younger than me. So when I got out of high school at 18, when I was 18 and moved away from Scarsdale, he was only 11. So we never saw each other very much.
All right, you mentioned that you and Kathy were taking your honeymoon by driving around the country in a van.
Yes, and I found my itinerary. I left out someplace in there between Susan leaving San Francisco Chronicle and going to work for City Magazine. She bought a house on Clay Street where I had visited her. Then she moved to New York.
Okay. Now, when Susan had the house on Clay Street in San Francisco, that was before you and Kathy had met and married, right?
That was before I met Kathy, yes.
Okay. So back to your honeymoon. Do I understand, tell the jury, did you travel around the country and live in your van for a couple of months?
Yes.
Bob, even though it was trust money, did you need to live in a van traveling around the country and sleep by the side of the road?
Absolutely not.
Why did you do it?
What I wanted to do.
Did Kathy
What
want it?
we wanted to do.
And how was it?
It was fun.
You've heard Tommy, your little brother, testify here that he resented you to this day for pulling a trick on him in a revolving door. Do you remember that event?
I remember Tommy's testimony. I don't remember the incident. Tommy said, and this is when he was an adult, so I don't know how old we were then. I don't remember when he was talking about me ignoring him in the revolving door. It was not when he was little. He was a grown-up.
At any rate, tell the jury a little bit about where you went, you and Kathy, when you spent your 2-month honeymoon.
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
What did you do after you and Kathy came back from your honeymoon?
I went to work at the Durst organization. It was just like I expected it to be. and I did not love it. I barely liked it at all. I was in a room with a whole bunch of suits. All day long, and people would talk about language in a lease or in a mortgage. I gradually figured out how to do things, but it was not something I loved. Meanwhile, for Kathy, life had gone the other way. Kathy's family, her brother went to college. None of her older 3 sisters went to college. Kathy did not plan on going to college. But when we were in Middlebury, she got an idea that she wanted to be a nurse. Thinking back, to when her father was so sick.
It's
did you-
time for us to break for the day because it is now after 4:30. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have you remind you not to converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. We will resume tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Tomorrow dark?
Tomorrow is not, I have misspoken. I'm thinking ahead to Wednesday at 9 a.m. when we are returning. I'll be here tomorrow. Lawyers will be here, but you will not. You'll return Wednesday at 9 a.m. Thanks for catching that. Received a note earlier from a juror about an issue that went away. I just want you to know that we heard from the juror. Let's see. So what this juror was concerned about today instead would be an issue on Wednesday, hoping to leave at 3:30.
I originally had that we left at 3:30 on both Wednesday and Thursday.
That's what the.
Pardon? So Thursday we're leaving at 3:30. So let me say that I think that sometimes at the beginning of an examination of a witness, it's useful, particularly in this instance, it's useful to get your bearings, get used to testifying, and sometimes easy questions are a good way to start. But tell me all the places you went in the van during your honeymoon is not, that's stretching it. So let's keep it a little bit tighter than that, and that is any part of the story that is going to illuminate an actual defense or a refutation of the people's case, or something that would reduce the credibility of a witness presented by the people, that's fine. But I just want to give you that suggestion. Now, is there anything else for me to consider?
Two quick issues.
Yeah.
First issue is the issue with the juror on August 19th.
We'll get to it. I will
Okay.
see how we're doing.
Okay, the second issue, Your Honor, is I would like the court to indicate for the record, because the Court of Appeal is going to have, they'll have a naked transcript, but they're not going to have what the court has. And that would be that not only is Mr. Durst not showing any issues relating to competence, etc., his memory, the way he responds, his expressions, in every way, he is not only testifying with what appears to be complete command, he's got a substantially better memory and recall than the memory expert just testified. So I just want to make sure that this is...
He can't help himself.
Is that gratuitous? I mean,
No, it's not gratuitous.
Here's our witness here, and that's completely unfair for you to say that, but I will agree with you, though. I made an extensive record that there's no reason this witness could not testify. I had every confidence that he would be able to testify clearly and intelligently as he is doing now. That's sufficient. That's a sufficient record. Thank you.
Your Honor,
Yes.
will the court provide us with a number that we should call tomorrow to do, we're supposed to work?
Yeah, so tomorrow, Mr. Durst has waived his presence in writing in open court. I've received that. You're welcome to be here or to phone in. The policy of this court is to encourage remote appearances. I want to have the jury instructions ready. We've got about 10 paragraphs at issue. I have sent out my 11th draft of these instructions. I hope to conclude with our 12th draft and final draft tomorrow.
Then we'll be calling in then, Your Honor.
That's very good. From our judicial assistant will give you the number you may call.
Does that mean will you be here, Your Honor, or?
I will be here. We're going to be on the record.
Oh, okay.
Your Honor, if we
Yes.
if we do decide to come, may we be more casual or?
Yes.
Thank
yes.
you.
And what time, Your Honor?
9 o'clock. Actually, can you make it 8? You want to do 8:30?
Well, we can do whatever time the court wants.
9 o'clock's fine.
Okay. And we just need the number then, Your Honor.
Yes, Jay will give it to you. All right, anything else before
Thank you,
I
Your Honor.
recess? All right, Department 1 is adjourned.